Coming up on today's show, Zara Shah is a Pakistani-Canadian queer sex worker. She uses her unique immigrant experience and perspective as a way to draw intersection between race, cultural background, and sexuality. Being a non-monogamous sex worker has allowed her greater control and freedom in both her social and professional life. And her book, Non-Monogamy and Sex Work, explores that in detail. Welcome to Loving Without Boundaries, where we hear inspiring stories, share actionable advice, and talk about the challenges and the joys of ethical non-monogamy and polyamory. I'm your host, Kitty Shambliss. Coming up, my conversation with Zara Shah. Welcome back to Loving Without Boundaries, where I'm really excited to be here with Zara Shah, who wrote recently the book Non-Monogamy and Sex Work, which came out through Thorn Apple Press. And I'm really excited to have a beautiful conversation with you today, Zara. Thank you for joining us.
It's just exciting to talk about something that I've had to hide about or stay silent about for a very long time. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm sure we'll dive into that. I'd love it if you could give our listeners a brief introduction to you and your work.
My name is Zara Shah, and I am a Pakistani-Canadian immigrant. I actually immigrated to Canada when I was 18 years old. So a lot of my life was spent in a rather religiously conservative culture. And that has sort of carried right into my work and into my everyday life. That still makes a big part of who I am, even though I have been living in Canada for 16 odd years now. And my work is really about trying to bridge that gap between these two cultures, because it was difficult for me to do that. And I hope that I can help other people navigate these murky waters.
That's so beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. And I'm so glad that you are here with us. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing, being a voice, I'm sure, for a lot of other people who need to be heard as well. So I'd love to, before we start talking about your book and what brought you to do that, I'd love it if we can talk a little bit about your background, if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So I'd love to ask you an intro question there, which is, was there a moment in your life where you knew that you were maybe going to be living your life a little bit differently, or maybe you weren't really like the other kids, or just a moment where you realized that you were a little bit different? Does anything come to mind? What I call your light bulb moment?
I wouldn't say that there necessarily was a light bulb moment, but perhaps though maybe this would count as a light bulb moment, even though it was more like a realization sort of hitting me that I had missed out a lot in life with regards to expressing myself sexually and with regards to expressing my gender as well, and in the ways that I wanted to. And that realization of having missed out is what kind of hit me. And it got me thinking if, I would actually be okay with spending my life being in a box with someone where I could not explore my sexuality, which is something I had already missed out on a great deal for most of my life. And so it was that thought that kind of like, it was almost really sad and depressing at the moment, but then it was also freeing. And just, that I did not have to miss out anymore, that I did have the chance to truly live in the way I wanted to. And I had no reason to miss out on experiences that I'd been wanting for so long, that there was still so much life that was yet to be lived. And I think that's kind of what made me realize that I probably would not be okay with strict monogamy in any kind of context.
Mm. And
And
I'm curious. Thank you for sharing that, Sarah. And I'm curious about when was that? When was that period of your life?
that period of my life where I felt that way, honestly, when I came to Canada, and this is not just about monogamy, this is also generally about sexuality and romance as well. When I came here and I saw the kind of openness in this society regarding physical affection, sexuality, and all those things, it was a little overwhelming because I had never seen anything like that. And I just thought, wow, like I've never even like been on an actual date with someone or made out or kissed someone, which may seem like small things, but it was just in that kind of moment. And I feel like that moment kind of spiraled into years of just feeling like I wanted life to be more. Even though maybe for 18 years in Pakistan, I did not get to have more. I wanted more now. And but it wasn't so easy. It wasn't like I came here and I'm like, oh, I just want to be non-monogamous and I want to be a sex worker. It was more like first getting comfortable with myself, with my sexuality enough to actually even want to be with someone else and not feeling ashamed about it, not feeling ashamed about sexual desire itself. And when I became a little more confident in that, I I started really because once I was confident in my sexuality, even when I wasn't necessarily non-monogamous, it made it so I I only got with partners, people, men and women who were who had similar values to mine. So they too were the kinds of people who would respect your sexual autonomy or autonomy as a person in all those ways. And so because of those choices I made about the people that I was going to be with, it became easier for me to navigate the question of non-monogamy and to draw the conclusion that that was probably what suited me best. And so much of what drove that was very, so much of what drove that without a doubt is really just feeling like that was an experience I wanted to have. I wanted to know
Mm.
people, meet people. I wanted to, even though it's the notion is becoming more and more popular these days that polyamory is not just sex. At first, it did start as something about sex for me. It did. It very much did. I
Mhm.
liked it, and I knew that do having sexual experiences with other people of all kinds, men, women, trans, non-binary folks, like that would enrich my life. It did enrich my life. So, and I wanted that to be a part of myself and my life more.
Mhm. Yeah, I really appreciate hearing that. And you were, just so I understand too, you were born in Pakistan, is that right?
Yes, I was.
So when you say you wanted to experience it because partly because of where you were born in your culture, you felt that you had some of those desires suppressed. You weren't able to really be yourself.
Yes,
Hmm.
absolutely. Yes, that was a huge, huge part of it to feel so because it's like even if I wanted to do it, even if I was gonna do it, the culture did not necessarily the society as a whole didn't encourage it. So your social circles, you'd feel awkward around people about your choices, about what you're doing, about who you're interacting with. And even if I was able to do it, there would be just so much awkwardness and questions and stigma. And so I couldn't. And that was absolutely repressive. And I think when I started my sexual journey, I think some part of me just knew all along that I did not want any amount of repression in there anymore.
Yeah, it sounds to me like there's even, some ways that that really affected you, like in terms of maybe even trauma recovery, having to,
Absolutely.
yeah. So that's been part of your journey as well as like that healing.
It has, especially with regards to, there was a lot of trauma because I often, wanted to do things that I knew I'd have to face some kind of consequences for. So not having that, having a boyfriend who's supportive of the fact that, I can go and be with other people is extremely liberating and beautiful and important to me. And it was also healing in terms of having been body shamed a lot, childhood trauma around body and stuff. And then, being able to explore your body in so many different ways with different people and being loved in that way in different contexts, different ways by different people. It is
Mhm.
very healing.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yes.
that's beautiful. I love that. I love that. Um, and how long, when is it that you were born in Pakistan and then you, moved to Canada? I'm curious, how long ago was that?
So I came to Canada in 2008.
Okay. Mhm.
Yes. And I
Okay.
haven't been to Pakistan since, actually. I haven't really had the opportunity or desire necessarily. The tickets are expensive, but I don't know if I want to go there. There's so much history there that I don't want to revisit. So much traumatic history in regards to family and a lot of other things. And I feel like I'd have to hide or change parts of me, even if I were to
Mhm.
visit. So I
Mhm.
haven't since. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you've been healing and really coming to be the person that you are meant to be, and what an incredible journey that's been for you, to the point that, I mean, writing a book is a big deal. I know firsthand the amount of work it takes in writing a book, so that's really phenomenal. What would you say were some of the challenges in your healing journey and in really expressing yourself and being who you are and releasing some of that stigma and that need that you might have had to try and hide parts of who you are? What would you say were some of the challenges in that?
Some of the challenges. So, the biggest challenge I probably faced to get here was I I consistently had this ever since, every kid has that, but I carried into my adulthood the need to have approval by others, especially my parents and, my broader family, like their approval and their actually not just outright approval, but even actual praise being sort of necessary to my existence. It was so important to me. So I had to let that go. I had to let that go. And I think the more I realize that I have a lot more fun when I'm not looking for other people's approval. And realizing that was, I just think once you realize that, you can't really go back. And I think, as someone who also suffered a lot of childhood abuse and everything, it became very important to me at some point. I would say probably around my late 20s when I started being more financially independent and all that, to just do things and live a life that was for me.
Mhm.
And that was also part of my therapy, just my therapist trying to actually help me be myself and live and do what I needed to do for myself, and not be that concerned with approval of society, approval of family, or anything like that. And but because of childhood trauma, I also had to deal with a lot of issues when I came into non-monogamy, because being a kid who was constantly compared to others with regards to body, intelligence, and everything, there were a lot of insecurities in me that I had to deal with to make non-monogamous healthy relationship.
Wow. And I'm sure that that really was part of your personal growth journey as well. Sounds like you've really been growing and learning and about yourself, but also in a capacity to give back to other people, which is so beautiful.
Thank you so much. And I think, yes, that is probably the greatest gift non-monogamy has given to me, is that I I feel jealousy and insecurity, but it makes it so I will always be reflecting on those things. I won't just be like, oh, I feel jealous, so I'm gonna let that completely consume me or direct my actions or my living. I let myself feel that jealousy, but being in a non-monogamous relationship, like a really beautiful, healthy, loving non-monogamous relationship, which it's been 10 years now actually, it makes it so I will always kind of look within. Every time I feel those jealousies, I feel those insecurities, I'll always be looking at parts of myself where those feelings are coming from. And I think for me, at least, being able to make those parts feel seen has been the greatest gift of that non-monogamy has actually given me.
To feel really, really seen and to express yourself. Yeah. That's so beautiful. So tell me a little bit more about your work. Like, so this, of course, non-monogamy can be a very personal journey, but how did your sexuality and exploring non-monogamy and becoming your true self, how did that start to manifest in your work?
Because I think in part because we had a non-monogamous relationship where we have a lot of trust for one another, my decision to to become a sex worker, what I mostly do is create adult content. And I've had a lot of success with it. And in part because I have a supportive partner who doesn't see my body as his property. And that's a big part of non-monogamy, is to not see possession as part of a relationship. I know other monogamous couples where women have had a lot harder time starting an OnlyFans, even if it was going to be lucrative for them. But with myself and my relationship, my partner has been extremely supportive. It's not even been like a question. He's liked seeing my success. He's supported me in creating content, even made some of that with me. He he likes to see me actually thrive in this work. And I don't think that kind of dynamic would be possible if it were not for non-monogamy. And because I didn't have to be hesitant about the work I was doing or constantly be hiding it from him or half hiding it or just telling lies, it allowed me to be successful in it.
What a huge 180 from being in an environment and growing up in a place where you had to hide who you were and be so repressed and all of that, and then to then creating adult content. Like, that is such a 180. Talk about personal growth.
I mean, it really, really, really is. It's almost like I do think somewhere my 15-year-old self is just kind of completely flabbergasted by looking at the 35-year-old me. So,
Yeah, that's interesting.
yeah.
What a fun question. Like, is there anything that the you of today would maybe give advice to the younger you, that if you were like putting your arm around the younger version of you, that you would say to them?
Basically, my best advice for her would be fuck what people think, live your life.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. So I'd love to start to transition over into your book. Like, what was the moment where you were like, "Oh my goodness, I need to write this book"?
Well, actually, I've always, I mean, I know I've always been sort of writing. So not writing books necessarily, but blogging, writing, writing my thoughts out in like op-ed pieces, stuff like that. I've done a lot of that in the past here and there, and mostly through blogging. And people have always sort of told me that because of uh, the kind of intersectional lens I bring to a lot of issues, that my voice is very unique and important. And that's very flattering. But I honestly never really necessarily, like, I never necessarily thought that I would be writing a book about it. And then a friend of mine told me that her boss was actually looking for people to pitch in their ideas for their series about non-monogamy, more than two, that series. And I felt like I really had something to say there. So I just sent her my pitch. And it was around the pandemic too. And that's where I was actually really big into writing when the pandemic kind of started. So the moment she sort of actually said that, I was like, I absolutely need to put this out there, because non-monogamy and sex work, that's not an intersection that's talked about a lot. That's especially not an intersection that's talked about a lot coming from the perspective of someone who's a woman of color and an immigrant and has experienced or is a bridge between two different cultures. So I I thought that was very important that it be out there, because there isn't enough of it. I mean, people have talked about non-monogamy forever, but rarely from the lens of sex work and sex workers. And
Yeah, I really appreciate the concept, and that to put the time in to get this work out there. And I've loved what I've read so far. So I'd love it if, from the lens of being a sex worker, can you speak to how non-monogamy can be an intrinsic part of the industry?
oh hell, absolutely yes, it is. And whether or not you like, I feel like even my friends who are monogamous are more like monogamish when they enter the sex industry, because your partner at the very least has to be okay with you, with at least on film, working with other people. And I think that alone is kind of a challenge to notions of monogamy and commitment. So I think that, in fact, actually a lot of sex workers I know are in open relationships, because that does make a lot of things easier. It does make it so your partner is actually supportive of what you do. And I have found consistently that my friends who actually are in a more very strictly monogamous sort of dynamic, they have a much harder time actually really putting themselves out there, which is what is very much a requirement to gain success in this industry. And I mean, even if you are monogamous, you do have to become comfortable with a lot of things, even if it's not necessarily your partner fucking other people or being in a committed relationship with other people. You have to be somewhat flexible about sexuality. I think that's a requirement. Even if you're a monogamous person, it still is something you have to work on. You have to give that to your partner, who
Hmm.
would eventually be making porn with other people. And
Hmm. Yeah. And just, if I may ask, do you have like a nesting, like a live-in partner, a main partner?
oh yes, I do. I do. I live with my partner, and these days my schedule is way too tight for actual non-monogamy and seeing other people. But I work with other people fairly often for my adult content. But I I'm just one of those. Some of my friends have said these days you're just non-monogamous in theory. and not practice because you're not putting yourself with them. Like, I just don't have the time or the reserves for it. I have so much to do. And I'm already putting myself out there in adult content. So I think that's enough from me, you know?
Yeah.
So
I hear you.
yeah.
I hear you. So how does that work in terms of setting like boundaries? Because I would imagine that the lines can get maybe blurry between personal life and work. So how does that impact you, like setting up healthy boundaries around that?
It is so, so, so difficult. In fact, I don't even know if I necessarily have an answer for that because I'm still struggling with that. I mean, like, sex has always been such an emotional thing for me that to go into it as like this very technical based acting, it just, I mean, the one boundary we do have is that my partner don't actually see, like, he doesn't see he will see some things when, say, like a clip or something. If I ask him to edit it or something, that's fine. But it's like one of the boundaries we have is that we will not go out of our way to see things that might hurt us. But he knows that I am with other people in those videos and everything, and he knows about those people on some, like, I mean, we talk about the people that we meet, even if it's just me filming with other people. So that's a rule that we do have. Open communication more than anything. But and I feel like our boundaries in our relationship about, you know, how much of ourselves we can give to other people, those boundaries are pretty clear. But for me, it is still a kind of a struggle to make sex entirely about technical, like technique and aesthetic on film, because sex has always been so much more. So that has been a struggle for me personally. And absolutely, jealousies have happened, and more so on my part than his, to be honest. I I think I feel those things a little more intensely sometimes. And I do think that jealousy might be something I will be struggling with for a long time, in part because of my childhood trauma that I've had, but also that just because I'm struggling with it doesn't mean that it has to occupy a huge space in my relationship or a huge space in my work or a huge
Mm,
space in my life.
mm,
So, yeah, there and as far as boundaries blurring goes, it's like I feel like um one of the things that I was dealing with at one point is that sometimes I was trying to, like, divide attention equally among partners until, my partner said to me I didn't have to feel so obligated to do that all the time, that I could be more natural about it, that I definitely did not have to give more than I could give. And I think that has been the biggest lesson for me, is that even when you are in a relationship with multiple people or having experiences or loving multiple people, it doesn't mean that you have to give all of them your all. It doesn't mean that. And I think the biggest boundary that I've had to make is just on my own emotional reserves and
mm,
sexual reserves and all of that. Yeah.
mm. Yeah. Thank you for being so vulnerable with us here. And I want to honor you for sharing that, that you even experienced jealousy yourself. And just so my belief is that jealousy is just an emotion. It's just an emotion that's normal. It's natural. We all are going to feel different emotions. So I applaud you for ditching the shame on that, not letting yourself feel, it's like not shaming yourself for feeling a normal emotion. And so does that mean that your partner is also practicing non-monogamy? So that's where some of the jealousy comes up?
Yes, my partner also is non-monogamous, so I have at times felt jealous. But the more I looked at my jealousies, the more I realized they were stemming from a much deeper place. So, like, I'm comparing myself to another woman, but a lot of the comparison that my mind is doing is things that my mom had said to me growing up.
Oh, wow.
It
Yeah.
just, it's like that moment of, wow, like, it's basically my mom talking, not really me. And I I think having to work through that has been really, really, really good for me. Not even just in terms of non-monogamy or relationship, but for me as a person to just work through that has been it's been a relief. It's been like I unburden myself from some things. Every time I look deeper within those insecurities and jealousies and I let those insecurities actually feel seen and not shamed, I kinda less the burden on me just became lighter and lighter.
Mm, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that. Um, in terms of, I noticed that you mentioned in your introduction about challenging social barriers. I love that phrase of turn, or turn of phrase, I should say. Tell me a little bit more about how the whole non-monogamy and sex work, the title of your book, and everything that you have there is challenging social barriers, and how that's. It sounds like it's almost become a part of your DNA, part of your identity to be challenging social barriers.
Oh,
Which I
yeah.
appreciate
Yes.
because I feel like that's partly where I come from as well. But how has that impacted you? I mean, I'm sure at some moments it helps you to maybe feel more courageous or helps your personal growth, but maybe at other times it might feel challenging in other ways.
It is absolutely challenging, and it is absolutely also freeing, and it's absolutely, it's hard, but it's rewarding. It's all those things. Um, so social barriers, I mean, the reality, I feel like there are even more social barriers with regards to talking about sex work than there is about non-monogamy. But because a lot of my community of friends is, in fact, non-monogamous, these were people that were very open to, someone in their circle being a sex worker. It's no big deal for a lot of them. However, I do feel like in the queer community, both sex work and non-monogamy are often stigmatized. And that has been a challenge, because even queer people love to use non-monogamy as a kind of a hate toy. And even, I have queer friends who are like, like, it's degrading. Sex work is degrading. It's a kind. So I find myself in leftist and queer circles for the most part. That is what most of my social circle is. And when even within those circles, these things are so stigmatized, it's it's challenging to know when you can talk about your life and yourself, because these things are a big part of me and I'm no longer into the idea of hiding those things. I mean, hiding doesn't do anyone any good, and yet in these communities I still find myself hiding parts of me.
I'm curious where you live now. You said in London, Ontario. How progressive is that area? Is it that progressive?
The young people here are pretty progressive, I would say. Actually, it's getting more and more increasingly progressive here and more racially diverse as well, but it's not it's like it's still not progressive like Toronto was. I used to live in Toronto for until 2020. I lived in Toronto. I actually knew a lot of sex workers over there, like in person, and people who were non-monogamous. So many communities of that kind all around Toronto. During the Pride Parade, I would meet so many new people who had similar lives. I don't really have that here. So I do think that has been a social barrier, even though I have friends here who I'm close with, who know all about me and everything. I feel like the kind of community that came together in Toronto and how gung-ho they were about, being your authentic self always, I haven't really been able to find that here. That level of just pride. I mean, the Pride Parade in Toronto is just, I always participated in it, and I always met newer people and found new communities through it. And it's something I really, really do miss a lot.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
I've been
that's
able to
awesome.
find friends here, but I wouldn't say I've been able to find community necessarily in the way I would
Mm,
like. So my
mhm.
community is more scattered around the globe, throughout the GTA area in Ontario. So
Yeah, I find that in my own life too. So you're in good company. Sometimes we to find our people, to find our fellow freaks, they might not be right down the street, right? We might have to go a little further. So let
yeah.
me know if you're ever in the Washington D.C. area, and I'd be happy to meet up for coffee.
Oh,
Um,
awesome.
who would you say your book is like meant for? Like, who do you think it would be like a great person, your target person that will be reading your non-monogamy and sex book?
Actually, I kind of dedicated that book to all my sex worker and non-monogamous friends who probably kind of already know a lot of the things I talk about. But my target, when I'm thinking about somebody really getting something from that book, learning something, I'm thinking about a woman like myself who might be coming from a conservative culture or a conservative family. She could be an Italian immigrant or someone who just came from Russia or India or China or anywhere, but that for whom sexual conservatism has been such a part of their upbringing. And I hope that when they read what I've written, that they feel a little less alone, that they feel, and I hope that a sex worker who reads my book also feels less alone, also feels like, okay, the stigma is maybe becoming less and less. Uh, the stigma would never actually become less, but if reading my book and for that moment make your lifestyle and your life choices feel a little less stigmatized, give
Mm,
them a kind of like solidity and voice and platform. If I can
mhm.
do that even for a moment, I feel like that counts for something.
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. Yeah. Anytime I've written one book and I wrote it back in 2017, and to this day, anytime even one person tells me that my book helped them, it feels so good. Like you just really feel it on your heart. It's just amazing. So I'm sure that the same, even just reading just the first section of your book, I can feel your heart in what you wrote there, just sharing your soul and your desire to help other people. So I want to just tip my hat to you for
Thank you.
taking the time, because again, I know how hard it is to write a book. It takes a lot of courage, a lot of dedication, and I honor you for doing it.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. It was definitely hard, especially with my schedule, because I'm constantly like the work I do is like, I don't really necessarily get days off. With sex work, it's like you're always kind of on the clock on some level. You're always
Mhm.
trying to just make more money, and it's so much harder to fit writing a book into all that. But I
Yeah.
kind of also wanted to write it so that people know that, we exist. Non-monogamous sex workers who are brown women or immigrants from other countries. We exist. And we are, even if we are a minority or whatever, we still exist. And what we have to say, it actually matters.
It does matter. It absolutely matters. Yeah. I'm so thrilled that you wrote this book, and also thrilled that you reached out to me to share your voice and your mission here on our podcast, which is listened all over the world, right? So that's amazing. I love that we live in the year 2025 as we're recording this, and I'm here in the United States and you're in Canada, and we're able to have this really heartfelt conversation. So I really appreciate that very much. Is there any parting words of wisdom you'd like to share with our listeners, or maybe answering a question that I didn't ask that you'd like to touch on?
I think that I want the people who are listening to, more than anything, if they have any kind of like, stigma in their minds about sex work, I would like them to explore that. I would really like them to destigmatize sex work for themselves and support the sex workers and protect the sex workers in their lives and be the kind of person that a sex worker can come out to. Like a person who is a sex worker just feels like they can be safely sharing that with you without judgment. So that is the one parting message. And I think the other one, and this was my biggest lesson, is that if you feel jealous, then just feel your jealousy, feel your feelings. Do not try to shut them down. Do not try to bottle them, but also don't let them consume you. But there's nothing wrong with just being human. So be human and be kind, and work towards destigmatizing sex work more and more in whatever ways you can. Yeah.
Such a beautiful message. I love it. Well, I really enjoyed the conversation with you. Where can people find you and your book and your work, or if they want to reach out to get in touch with you?
Oh, so Thorn Apple Press is where my book is, but it's going to be also in some local stores. I'm not sure yet which local stores it's going to, but it's on thornapplepress.ca, and it's also available on Amazon. So you can grab it both ways. And I don't necessarily have a lot of I do have a presence online, but so much of it is around my porn rather than my writing. But if you want to reach me, or my Instagram is literally big_honking_caboose 2.0. So you can reach me there.
I love that. That's amazing. That is amazing. So awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Zara. This has been such an incredible conversation. I'm so glad that you reached out, and congratulations on your book. And I know it's going to help a lot of people. I look forward to continuing to read it, and just, congratulations. And know that I'm in your corner. I'm rooting for your success.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to today's show. If you like what you heard, are struggling with some aspect of your relationships, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit to work with me as your relationship coach, here's what I invite you to do next. Head over to lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply. That's lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply, and book a call to speak with me. I'll get on the phone with you for about 45 minutes, and we'll get you crystal clear on 3 things. Number 1, exactly what's not working well in your relationships right now. Number 2, ideally where you'd like to be and what might be getting in the way. And number 3, the exact strategy to get you there, helping to close that gap. Remember, creating healthy, open relationships does not typically happen by itself. Many often need expert guidance to make it happen. We've helped clients all over the world to feel safe, happy, and secure in open relationships, while not losing their mind or their cherished partners. To see if we can help you do the same, head over to lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply. I'm Kitty Chambliss, and let's talk soon.